And we're back with Truth Unrestricted, the podcast that is creating and interpreting the language of the disinformation age. That's what we're doing. We're definitely doing that. I'm Spencer, your host. I'm back again today with Patrick. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing good, Spencer. How are you doing today?
Yeah, it's hot. It's hot. And I didn't think about that when I made this little sort of makeshift room studio thing. So I hope we don't go too long today because it's hot. It's hot.
Have to start shooting these in the morning.
Yeah, except that you'd have to get up at like 4.
I can dig it. I'll probably still be up at 4. Who knows?
Wow. Okay, well, teach their own.
Just to prep for the show, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to talk today about some election denial. I'm calling it election denial. The person involved is insistent that it's not election denial, but we're going to go through that today. But first, I want to tell you like a fictional tale, Patrick. So let's pretend that I'm a doctor.
You are a doctor.
I'm not a doctor. In fact, even in the pretend, I'm not really a doctor. I'm just a person who has had the house DVDs and watched them multiple times, okay, for the TV show.
Close enough.
So I've seen a lot of people act as doctors, and it doesn't look all that hard.
Right.
So
you just go around saying stuff isn't lupus.
It's not lupus. I'm going to now diagnose a patient. Someone says they have something wrong with them. I'm going to diagnose them. And I've determined that they have cancer, Patrick. They have cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very serious. Now, you might ask me how I know they have cancer, right? So then I say, okay, well, I'm going to now go and do an examination of the patient, and I examine them, and for reasons that are not clear, I haven't said what kind of cancer I think they have, just that they have cancer. And then I've said I've examined just their skin, except for their, parts, but the rest of their skin, their body, I've examined, and I've found 5 pimples. Okay, 5 of them. And it's come to my attention that pimples are not supposed to be there on a human body. And I found 5 of them, Patrick. So here's what I want to do to fully diagnose, to prove to the world what I already know, which is that the patient has cancer. I want to cut into the patient at the location of all 5 of the pimples and carve out a piece of them and test each of these 5 pieces to show the cancer. So now that I've told you my plan, what do you think of my plan?
Not much.
Why not?
I mean,
what's wrong with my plan, Patrick?
Well, I'm not saying not much in the sense that I'm calling it down. I don't have much to think about that. For all I know, that could be what people do. I mean, that sounds like biopsy, right? Like when you test.
Oh, yeah, that sounds
material.
like a good word. We'll use biopsy. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's do that. But I'm definitely going to cut into them and carve a piece out of them and pull that piece out.
And you have their consent. They're okay with you doing that? Okay.
Well, I mean, I haven't talked to them about it yet. I mean, you're the second opinion guy right here. You're just as qualified for this as me.
And I saw House too.
Yeah.
Let's
good.
do it.
No, that's good. That's excellent. That's good. Right. You're so bad at this. You're supposed to tell me to not carve into a person.
There are things going on.
I'm never asking you for advice about this serious stuff ever again. So let's say I'm talking to a sane and rational person.
Okay.
They might say,
you should.
They might say,
that's
right.
Yeah. That's
and I say, we're fighting cancer. Don't you care about fighting cancer? Cancer is very serious.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we might need to do a couple things to fight cancer, obviously whatever little bit of harm we do is minuscule compared to the cancer that I said they have.
Mm-hmm. That's your opinion. Yeah.
If we don't find the cancer when we do the 5 holes that we carve in them, there's a better than even chance that I will just say we should have carved deeper, and we need to go back and dig deeper to find where the cancer is, because the cancer's there if you dig deep enough, Patrick.
Oh.
You just need to keep digging deeper into them until you find the cancer. That's the
Right.
method. Right. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now that I've told my little anecdote, we're going to leave it be, and we're going to go into this episode about election denial. Okay. So
Okay.
there is a entity. I don't know if it claims that it's a nonprofit entity exactly, although I think they probably would say that they are. It's a group. It's a sort of official group. They have a website. It's called the Election Truth Alliance. And it formed shortly after Donald Trump won the 2024 election because the people involved feel certain that there was something wrong with the election. Before they really looked at anything, they were sure there was something wrong with the election, Patrick. Are you, is that confused look in your face because you're comparing it to my anecdote already? Or is it, no? No, okay. All
No,
right. All right.
I'm waiting for any sort of reason to be described about why they felt that before they
Well,
ever
they
took the.
felt, I mean, I haven't heard them say it, but based on conversations I've had with many other people who have said similar things, everyone they talked to was going to vote for Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump won anyway, which exactly echoes the things that were said about the fans of Donald Trump after the 2020 election. Everyone they
Mhm.
talked to was definitely voting for Donald Trump, and yet he lost. So therefore, there must have been something wrong with the election. There were people who questioned the election. There was an entire group formed after the 2020 election that wanted to show something wrong. That was a group called True the Vote. I think there were other groups too, but this was the most prominent of them. It was called True the Vote, and it culminated with a movie that was made by a guy named Dinesh D'Souza. The movie was called 2000 Mules. Have you heard of this movie, Patrick?
No, never.
No. Yeah, it's more prominent among people who are sort of what they call pilled. Um, but it purports to show a method by which the election could have been stolen by Joe Biden in 2020. Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. It was supposed, because they couldn't find any evidence of, there was people who claimed that there was people bringing boxes of extra ballots that didn't belong into voting stations on election night in 2020, and but they couldn't find any evidence of it. No one of the millions of cell phone cameras, no one thought to bring their cell phone out at the time and video record it or take a picture or even take a real note of which voting station it was at or whatever. There's just these stories around, they come up with like urban legends. So they couldn't find any evidence of that. So this group decided that there must have been some other way that the ballots made it into the system to make the vote go Joe Biden's way. And they decided that in swing states, there was ballot mules that were bringing additional votes, and they were additional ballots, and they were just putting them into the regular old drop box. But they'd get noticed if they brought a lot. So they only brought, like 4 or 5 at a time, and they would go by. And they said, well, in order to get as many ballots as you'd need, you'd still need to go to many ballot boxes. So they did this whole thing where they grabbed a bunch of cell phone data and they examined it, and they looked for people who, by the location in their cell phone data, went by a large number of ballot boxes that were on the streets in the pre-voting, that you could vote early because there was a
Mhm.
pandemic going on in 2020. You could vote early, mail it
Mhm.
in, and the ballot box set for that. And they were looking for people who in a single day went past multiple boxes. And then they used that to presume that there was 2,000 ballot mules bringing additional votes. And they did the math. There's 2,000 of them. They go in multiple days and they bring 5 per box and they go buy 100 boxes and blah, blah, blah. You can get a lot of votes that way. And in the movie, I mean, you're probably not going to watch the movie, and that's fine. Don't watch the movie. It's fine. They have nice graphics. They have a picture of a city, which is supposed to be a city in Georgia, but it's actually, fun fact, a map of Moscow, Russia, with a bunch of red dots on it and a bunch of lines that are supposed to be the people that are going past these ballot boxes, and the dots are supposed to be the ballot boxes, and the lines are supposed to be the roots of the people, and it's supposed to manufacture the image that maybe there's a large, you know, you could pass by a lot of these and drop a lot of these ballots off, and that's amazing. So they also got video, and they showed video of people, multiple people who were dropping off more than one ballot. In Georgia, you're allowed to drop off more than one ballot. You're allowed to drop off ballots for your entire family. So that's what some people did.
Right.
But they never showed, what they didn't show in the movie was any single person showing up at more than one ballot box. And they didn't really highlight the fact that they didn't show that, even though that was the claim that they were making, was that, you know, a person could be walking past multiple of these ballot boxes on a single day. Why would they do that? Why would you do that, Patrick? Why would you walk by multiple ballot boxes on a single day? That seems really suspicious behavior. Really suspicious.
That's all I did, yeah, unless I lived somewhere near a ballot box.
Unless the ballot boxes are in busy areas, right? I mean, they're putting them in areas where there's high traffic people, because that's where people are, right? So they're putting them in places where people are likely to be walking and in, right? So the fact that people walk past multiple of these on a given day is no more surprising than they might walk past multiple phone booths way back when we had phone booths in the 80s and 90s and whatever, because they put the phone booths also in areas of high traffic for people, for the most number of people to use, potentially. This process that True the Vote went through, aside from the fact that they were definitely lying about a whole bunch of stuff in their movie, I mean, they had a picture of a map of Moscow, Russia, and claimed it was a city in Georgia, whatever. Aside from that, what they're really doing here is a thing that's called anomaly hunting. And it's also what what my anecdote was about, anomaly hunting. If you look at someone's entire body, you're going to find some things that look like something
out of the ordinary,
that you know, on a pristine body wouldn't be there, but no one's body is pristine.
No, yours is pretty good. Sorry.
When was the last time you saw it?
When we went for a walk a couple weekends ago.
I had clothes on, Patrick. You could see my neck and my arms. That's it.
Okay.
Right.
Sure, just diffuse my joke like a bomb, whatever.
Yeah, well, see? As someone we both know once said to me, Spencer, you don't know everything. You've never seen me naked. And he had me stumped. I didn't know everything. I still don't know everything.
Stay empty.
Yeah, but so, and the same is true for elections. They're not perfect. They're not, the data that you get from them isn't perfect. But so if you're anomaly hunting, you're going to find anomalies. You're going to find them. That's a thing you're going to do. If you're looking for anomalies, you're going to find them. And this, but then
you also have the responsibility to determine what, if any, significant impact those anomalies have.
Each anomaly has to have its own context and all of that. It's So this is where we come to this entity, this Election Truth Alliance. So we're going to show some clips. You took the time to watch an entire YouTube video before this. It was like, I don't know, half an hour or something, of this. The spokesperson for the Election Truth Alliance is a man named Nathan Taylor. And this is him appearing on what's the David Pakman show. Now, David Pakman is a fairly prominent YouTuber that's... I don't even think it's fair to say that he's cosplaying as a journalist. I don't know if he claims to be a journalist. I've seen some of his other videos before. Of the people who do this, I think he's one of the more level-headed and sort of even toned and less sensational. But we'll talk about it a little more at the end, but I'm going to give him a couple negative marks in this whole thing. But less negative marks than I think other people would get if they did this. They would have worse instincts here. But aside from that, we're going to play a clip. This is Nathan Taylor being asked the question of what is the Election Truth Alliance, and this is his answer. I think it tells the story fairly well. Here he is.
At this point, there's three.
It's just going to take a moment here.
It's me, Lily, and Jive. Lily and Jive have different backgrounds in either statistics and finance or political science. So we all got together, and that's when we sat down and we said this. We said, there are some interesting things with the election. Let's do a little bit of investigation. Let's see what can we start looking at to determine if our elections are being run correctly, free, fair, safe, and secure. That was the concern, as we wanted to verify the vote, to validate. And so that is what we did. We started bringing in volunteers with various backgrounds in statistics. Some of them have PhDs in statistics. Some of them are auditors or computer scientists. And that's when we sat down and we said, okay, how can we look at elections, and how could we perhaps apply statistics to look at elections to flag any concerns? And at the time, we knew that there was audits in the elections. We reviewed those. And if you're familiar, audits, that's a standard practice in finance, engineering, public safety. So auditing elections shouldn't be that much of a concern. And the concern was, as you said, people wanted very credible, very well-established concerns. And the common pushback was election denial was on the rise. So just want to make that clear. This is not the election denial. This is election integrity and auditing. This is a standard practice. And because of that mindset, we said, okay, let's do this. If you can apply statistics to detect fraud in banking, if you can apply statistics to do safety and quality testing in engineering, why can't we use statistics to flag non-human or abnormal voting behavior that could mean vote manipulation? That's what we said. And then we discovered this is already a thing. It's happening outside the U.S. already. There are already election fraud experts such as Roman Udot, Sergei Shvilkin, Peter Klimek et al., who've been applying election statistics to Russian elections, to elections in Afghanistan, Kenya, and Bolivia. And they have all begun to find credible concerns of election fraud. So we took their techniques, and the ETA has ran with those methods, and we've begun to analyze swing states and non-swing states for the 24 election, and then we begin to publish those reports. So that's the background. And then, so we'll go to...
No, stop. We're not showing that yet. So that's that's the setup. Already, like, as I get used to people using language this way, I watch that little clip and I get all kinds of little red flags. He's doing a little bit of category shifting there. He's name dropping some prominent statisticians who have developed statistical methods for examining election data. But this is an appeal. This is just an appeal to authority, right? He's attempting to give his analysis more weight because he's saying it's like what other people who are more prominent have done. So just doing the analysis the same way isn't a problem if you're applying the methods appropriately. He says things like in there that he said something like statistics is good for, or maybe he didn't say statistics. He said audits are good for engineering and banking and other fields. Therefore, they should be good to do here. Like, no one should be complaining about what I'm doing here. Like, it's really weird that people are up in arms about my audit that I'm doing. Okay, let's have a look at the audit and how he's done here. So first of all, I should have said earlier, but for anyone who's only listening, we're going to apologize. There's going to be some pictures and graphical pictures. We're going to do our best to describe them accurately. but you're at the limitation of our ability to describe things unless you watch it on YouTube. That's sorry. He presented the graphs. I'm just trying to describe his graphs. That's just how this is. So also, a lot of statistics in here. Many people are bored by statistics, but many of those same people really like statistics when the conclusion supports their bias, right? So please don't come to me and say you're bored by the statistics and then ever list me any statistic ever again, because I'm going to slam you for it. Statistics is a difficult thing to do, but
yeah, it is.
these are statistical presentations, but they're not even really difficult ones. Like they're not even using calculating correlations. They're not even doing things like standard deviations and all kinds of things like that. These are just ways to graphically show the data in such a way that it might show something else that you wouldn't see just by counting the ballots, right? So before we start, I need to say something about data. That when we look at data like this in a statistical fashion, we have a couple terms here. That there's something that might be called like natural data, which is just like how the data would fall if it was just no one was manipulating anything, everything was just more or less homogeneous, nothing funky going on, and also just very boring data. It's sort of natural, it's just sort of where it lies. There's something that's called a normal curve. That's not shown in any of his graphs, but what we're seeing is sort of a two-dimensional representation, or a pseudo three-dimensional representation of normal data is what is being shown here. And that's given the fair or normal pattern. And there's also a thing that we might call suspect data, which is like where the bulk of the data is in one position and then you have outliers. So in statistical analysis, the outliers will always tell you something. It might just be that whoever was taking the measurement about that point was asleep that day or something, right? Like sometimes the outliers are just bad data, but you have to look at them to determine that before you get rid of them. So I have a picture here. Pull this over, and we're gonna show this. Zoom that in. I should put that on stage. Okay, so we have his graphical analysis pulled from. I zoomed it in and I put a bunch of labels and circles and arrows because I like circles and arrows on this data. And this is the data that he uses side by side with. This data is like the sample data to show what it is that the named people that he mentioned, the statisticians, I think in this case it's mostly Sergei Shpilkin who first came up with this. I believe that's true. To examine Russian data. So you'll see there's two graphs side by side. We're graphing the voter turnout on the horizontal x-axis, and we're graphing that against the actual vote for the candidate who won. That's on the vertical y-axis. And individual precincts will count their individual data, and that gets added up into who won in total. And this is each individual precinct and its spot on the two-dimensional Cartesian coordinates that we've made by having voter turnout and also vote for a candidate. And according to Sergei Shpilkin, when he looks at Russian data, having sort of one blob that fans out a little bit is natural data. And this is a heat map. So the the points where you'll get the most dots is in dark red. That's the hottest spot. And then it fans out to a dark blue, which is no data. So it goes from deep red to yellow to green to like a greenish blue, and then eventually a dark blue. And this is a heat map. This is just what it does. It's just a mathematical representation that makes it look more visual instead of just a bunch of dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is what Sergei Shpilkin calls natural data, or at least for the subset he's looking at. And then on the left side is what he calls suspect data, which is, you can see there is a blob in a similar spot. It's more or less the same voter turnout within a range. And then there's a lot of data there. And then you see what's called, statistically speaking, what's called a skew, or perhaps a tail that leads, in his words, on the heat map that's shown, it would lead upward and to the right, which means that it's data that has what looks like more of a turnout, voter turnout, and at the same time also a greater number of people voting for, in that case, Vladimir Putin, right? So this is data that, this alone, by the way, isn't a sign that it was fixed. This is a sign that you, if you're looking for things, you'd be more likely to look at the data that's suspect than the data that's natural. And by the way, it looks like in this picture, just for the people who can't see, the data ranges upward to the right until it gets to a point that looks like there's another smallish red patch there, where there's a bunch of data that's almost at 100% voter turnout with, at the same time, 100% votes for Vladimir Putin. I would call that extremely suspect data, and it's likely that someone was stuffing ballot boxes in many different locations to make that happen. That's just my call. I didn't see the data. I obviously can't go to Russia and look at the individual things, but that's what that data looks like. And that's what Sergei Shpilkin was looking for. When he does this, by the way, Sergei Shpilkin does this because he's fairly certain that whoever is fixing the election, or leaning on the button for the election, leaning on the scale for the election, is not concerned about whether it looks natural or not. It would take a lot more effort to make the data come in fake and look like the natural data that's on the right, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's real votes also happening in there, and you don't know which way they're coming out. So in the suspect data, if everyone who was just going to vote was voting as enthusiastically with as high turnout and as much for Vladimir Putin as the fake data that Vladimir Putin put in, then you would get just one blob, and it would be way up in the top right-hand corner, where it would be almost 100% turnout and also almost 100% votes for Vladimir Putin. And that's what you'd see. It also would not mean that it was not fixed. It's just that it would look that way, look more like natural data, right? So this is the comparison data. This is the work that the Russians did, and this is what he's comparing against. So then he shows in his analysis, we're not going to show like all the video footage. That's why I pulled these individual screenshots out so we can describe them, because he's also showing them and not giving as much of a lengthy description as I'm giving for like a podcast listener. And so you just hear him vamping over the whole thing, and I didn't want that. I wanted to talk over his data, damn it. So this was data that he pulled from a county in California, Shasta County, California. It's a fairly red district, meaning that it's likely to vote for Donald Trump more than for a Democrat. And it does have this sort of blob that is evident of what might be called naturally lying data. So then he says, okay, well, this proves it then. I mean, American data looks a lot like Russian data, so we're good to go, right? We can make these comparisons against the Russian data, and we can say that when it's has a skew upward to the right, that this is a sign that there's something wrong with the data. So then he shows a new picture. These are all from the YouTube video, right? These graphs. And this is his data. So this image shows a deep red, it's not a blob, it's a vertical line. It's at roughly the 80 to 85% turnout mark. It's a deep red line varying from about 45-ish% to about 80, maybe like only 75% or so. And then around that in a line is sort of a lighter colors away from that. And then it also has another blob that doesn't even get to deep red. It's not enough data to get to deep red. It's not enough dots, but it is sort of a greenish color. And that's down in the much lower voter turnout, like 60% voter turnout, with only about maybe 8% votes for Donald Trump in that data set. And he's got these two blobs, and they're sort of, with each other. Like there's some light blue dots that are going to come between there. We have to guess because it's colored in that way. And he's saying that the data, the natural data, is this blob at the bottom with about 65% turnout or so, and about very low turnout for Trump, and that it's then skewing upward to the right. In other words, more voter turnout with a greater number of votes for Donald Trump. And then he says, jazz hands, right? Ta-da! I did it. I showed it. That's the thing. That's the bad data. It's upward to the right. It should have, when you get more voter turnout and then you get more votes for the guy who won, that's a sign that it's fixed. What do you think, Patrick?
I don't think that's a sign that it's fixed.
Oh, you saw through it already. Wow, that's such a sharp mind of yours. Wow, that's and you're not even you didn't even take statistics in school, did you? No,
Yeah,
not
I
much.
did.
Oh yeah, but not at the engineering level like I did. No, like probably just an intro or something, right?
Well, it's funny. It's for any bachelor's, whether you're going through arts or business, you have to take statistics. It's just it's one of those requisites.
Right, but it's not real statistics like for engineers would take, right? Like I got the real statistics. I got the real merit badge of this. You're just a beginner.
Everyone hated it. I was the only one that loved statistics.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't about the number crunching and that stuff so much. It was about the actual the method of interpretation and finding the statistical representation, right? Being able to see through what's reported and say, is this actually representing the population that you're trying to sample and stuff like that. But no, I enjoyed statistics.
Yeah. So this is his whole, well, it's not his whole case even, but this is the main thrust of his case, is that when that Sergei Shpilkin, his sort of name dropped Russian real statistician, says that when you have the data, I'll show it again, skewing to a greater number of voter turnout, and at the same time a greater number of votes for the party that won, this is potentially a sign that that party was actually putting extra votes in the ballot box and cheating at the election. But this data looks different, markedly different. It's not as simple as saying upward and to the right and you're good to go. So we're going to leave that be for now.
Okay.
He makes another claim here. He has sort of like three claims that he's making. The first one is sort of like ballot boxes are getting additional votes. Maybe. I mean, he doesn't know that because he hasn't seen. Maybe I should just address that real quick. we're fairly certain that there are not any additional ballots being stuffed into boxes. Like, generally speaking, we are. Again, go back to 2020. There was a lot of people who were mad that Donald Trump lost, and they demanded a recount in all kinds of states. And because Arizona is one of the most screwed up states in the entire group of 50 United States, they allowed it. And they allowed not only it, they allowed this strange group of non-professionals called, I can't remember what they were called, some kind of ninja thing or whatever. They were allowed to do, they were the one chosen to do the actual recount of the Arizona election. And they went through and they looked at all this stuff. So have you heard of the movement to have people have an ID when they go to the ballot box in the United States, the push for voter ID?
I understand that.
Yeah. Do you know why it's not really necessary?
No.
Okay, I'll explain. When you register to vote in the United States, they check all the things about you, and then you sign a card that's kept at the voter registration office. And then when it's time to go vote, you go to you're mailed, because you're on the voter registration list, you're mailed a reminder of what the day is and where your voting precinct is, because they can't have absolutely everyone show up at the same one building.
No.
They'll have, maybe, I don't know, a few thousand or something vote at each precinct. And then you'll go to your precinct, and then they'll have it divided by neighborhood. You probably voted before right here in Canada, but it's slightly different. You'll go to your lineup, and you'll go where your neighborhood is, and you'll go there, and they'll look for your name, and then they'll get you to sign a voter card to say that you're receiving your ballot, and you sign it. And then the person working at the booth takes the one you just signed, and then they look, and then they compare it against the one you signed when you registered. And if it's not the same, you don't get a ballot. So they're already checking the signature. And so when they did the Arizona check, that's what they did. They were checking through, I don't know what the voting population of Arizona is, several million, 3-4 million or something. They were checking through this many signature cards and checking them against the signature on the voter registration list to see that they were the same. And they found that they were almost the right number. They flagged a couple or whatever, like, I don't know, 50 or 100 of them or something, but not nearly the, I don't know, something like 60,000 or 80,000 or something they would need to flip the election. So if you're stuffing the ballot box with ballots, you also need to sign cards and add those and make them match the name on the voter registration list. And then also like the person who's checking them on the day is also putting a little thing, they're initialing or signing whatever, that they check that one. So you'd be able to check with them to see what they thought. I mean, so there are all kinds of other steps to this that are interlocking pieces that make it much, much more difficult to just throw a bunch of extra ballots in a box, because then the total number of voters on the tick mark on the box, and they check and find the total number of voters. If the total number of voters is different than the total number of ballots they have, they stop everything immediately and they check everything. But they don't find that. So ballot box stuffing would be incredibly, incredibly difficult to pull off, because you'd also have to do it at many, many voting precincts. There's almost 9,000 voting precincts just in Pennsylvania alone, which is the primary spot where he looked at his data to get this blob that's tailing, in his words, upward to the right, to show some suspect data.
Didn't he also tie this in, though, to the fact that there were it was the busier polling stations that this skew was coming out of? Like there was a certain threshold?
All right. So
like as if to suggest that the size of that volume of voters and voting somehow introduced a susceptibility. That was what I was.
He attempted to say that there was maybe a difference between, like, ballot box stuffing is different than another claim he made, which is a second claim, which is that they do have machines to just count the votes, voting tabulators. And these are just machines. It looks a lot like a copy machine. You feed the ballots, a big stack of ballots in one side, and much like a copy machine might take the little thing, and it pulls up one at a time, and it scans them, and it looks at them, and it goes through, and it zips them all through and counts way faster than a human could, and it counts all the ballots, and it counts how many were for Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, and it votes how many for this senator versus that senator, all the way down the ballot, because your voting at the time isn't just for president, it's also for all the other races that are getting decided at that time, which is almost always the governor and senator and several Congress people, whatever.
Mhm.
And so it counts them all at the same time. So the other claim is that the tabulator, the voting machine, is maybe off somehow. That it's just it's counting additional votes for Trump when it's supposed to be for Kamala Harris. So we should look at that. We should look at his. How organized am I really? Oh yeah, I can pull that up right here. Add stage. Da, da, da. So he pulled this up and he showed this other graph, which is two side by side, and that he says there might be this difference between times where they're hand counting and times where they're machine counting. So
I can't quite tell with this view. Is that from one station, or is that the aggregate of all the stations that he's looking at?
okay, so I can't remember if he mentioned it specifically in the YouTube video, but if he did mention it, he mentioned it very slightly, in an almost sleight of hand way. So if you'll note, okay, we should describe this a little bit for people who just listen. So right here, I have two of these same heat maps that are showing voter turnout versus voter share for the winning candidate, Donald Trump. And there's two of them side by side. So on the left, we have the hand count, which shows a blob that looks like what Nathan Taylor would call normal data. And it's at a roughly 85% voter turnout, and it's at roughly 40% voter turnout for Donald Trump. And then the machine count one is on the right, and this shows the precincts that were machine counted, and it's roughly 85% voter turnout again, but it's about 55-ish% votes for Donald Trump. So this is where we cue the music, the dun 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 music, like mystery time. We don't know what's happening. So for people who can see it, as opposed to people who are just listening to the podcast, Patrick, you want to clue them into another thing that I've done additionally on this view, these side by side view that you may
circled
notice.
St. Louis.
Yeah, I sure did. Is St. Louis in Pennsylvania? You good at geography?
I'm not good at geography, but I feel like you're asking me because it's not.
Yeah. It is not in Pennsylvania. In fact, that's not even St. Louis, the city. That's St. Louis County in Minnesota.
Oh, weird.
So he's sort of insinuating that the difference in these blobs might be happening because of a tabulator, a voting tabulator, a machine that counts the votes, that might be artificially inflating Donald Trump's count above Kamala Harris's count. That's sort of what he's saying here, but he's using data from a completely different data set. This is a statistical no-no. Like, if you want to show that the data from, I'll flip back to it, Pennsylvania, this is the data from all the precincts in Pennsylvania, and that there's something wrong with it, and that it's due to a difference between times where they hand counted and times where they machine counted, you need to divide up this same data set that way into one graph for the machine count and one graph for the hand count, the way he's done, except that he hasn't used the Pennsylvania data to do that. He's used data from a county in Minnesota to do that. And if he wants to say that, okay, there's this potential switching, he has listed on here the words potential switching with an arrow upward right next to the machine count, to make the case that he thinks that it's potentially switching votes, then he should take all the precincts from Minnesota and show this view of them here that he's done for Pennsylvania to show that it at least has the same skew. Even those two things alone wouldn't be enough to really make the case, but at least he has some statistical grounding to compare these two things, so that to say that he's at least dealing with the same kind of thing, apples and apples and oranges to oranges. But he's apples to oranges here. He's not dealing with the same data pool here. But he's kind of implying that the two are related because he's shown them the same kind of graph, the same color scheme.
I would get it if he was using it to illustrate, like, this is what it could look like. But then I would expect like a slideshow of it looking like that from all of the places that he pulled that from.
He could have just shown the Minnesota data. I suspect that he has the Minnesota data graph for this, but it doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like this two blob situation. It looks like something more like one blob. So he doesn't like it as much. But then I suspect also that he can't find a meaningful data group of a single county or whatever in Pennsylvania that shows this difference between hand and machine counting. So he's used the county in Minnesota. That's what I suspect. Because if he had it, he would have shown it. He would have said, this is one of the counties in Pennsylvania, but it's not. Also,
so he had to resort to something else that was easier.
Right. Well, it's sort of a statistical sleight of hand, right?
Yeah.
You do see this in people who do statistical analyses where they pull data from two separate data groups and pretend that they're related. The only thing that relates these two is that they're both voter pools that are voting on the same day, the same people, but they're from different states. So they're different groups, different data pools. That's how it works. So there are reasons why this would happen, and you're correct that I don't think he actually said it, but if you were at a precinct that had a smaller number of voters, you might be more likely to hand count them, and if you were at one that had a larger number, you might be more likely to machine count them. The idea that they'd be different is interesting. I'm sure there's probably some demographics involved, because there are a lot of demographic differences between the different parts of the states in the United States. Much more demographically diverse than Russian data that this analysis was initially meant for. So he makes a third claim. Do I have the... Yes, he has. We're going to play a video of that here. Pull that up. Okay. So here, let's just play it. Play.
Go ahead.
One of the questions I know my audience will have is, does the scenario Nathan is drawing up require individuals at either every county, precinct, etc., Or would this, and again, this is all, I'm not telling my audience.
So he's talking about the tabulation machines now, and the fact that they might be voting in some, counting the ballots in some other way than what you would get from hand count.
This is what happened. I'm asking questions to try to figure out exactly what the claims are. Would this be something that theoretically could be pre-installed in some of these machines, such that the machines already know what to do, and it doesn't require someone in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia precinct 39 is pressing a button?
Yes, the concern is that whether through compromise of the vendors, through a common point, like, for example, some of these systems use hard drives. If you were able to influence them before those hard drives ever get sent out, or putting code on the machines, yes, you could do this before the election. Cybersecurity-wise, an example of this is just malware that would have a timed window to execute. It wouldn't be manipulating votes or changing things before the election or after the election, just during that window. And we actually found, and this is something people know about, but maybe not as readily, is there's an example of this have already happened with technology. Have you heard of Dieselgate?
Have you heard of Dieselgate? So they go through a several-minute process of just talking about Dieselgate. Tell me, Patrick, when you heard this, when you watched the video and you heard this, were you did the Dieselgate reference ring true for you? Did you know anything about it?
I think I need a refresher on what the Dieselgate aspect was, please.
Dieselgate, I mean, wasn't involved with elections, but it was a situation where a company manipulated some firmware on a device to cheat.
Yes. The emissions detections. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. There was Volkswagen had diesel engines in their cars, and they had to pass certain emissions tests to be sold in Europe, and they wanted to get better fuel mileage, and they were having trouble getting the fuel mileage they wanted while also passing the emissions test. So they rigged their there's a little computer that sort of runs the thing. They when the emissions test device plugs in, the computer on the car goes into a different mode, and they programmed it to have the engine perform differently in that mode than they did when it was just in drive mode. And that's how they did it. It literally gave out more emissions when you were just driving it, but it passed the emissions test and still got better fuel mileage. Okay. But a couple of points here. First of all, is that Volkswagen designed the entire car and the little computer that went in it and everything. They had complete and utter access to all of the cars that they had rolling. They owned the assembly line that made them. They had complete access to everything. And it also required that there was an external signal, which was the emissions computer plugging into it, that caused a different mode to engage, which would be entirely different than what he's supposing here. He's talking about, oh, maybe someone could have put some malware on every single tabulator so that they count differently, and it's timed, it's magic, it just goes away, it disappears, and you'll never see it again. And so on election day, it just counts the wrong count. It just selects some random ones, and it boosts, 20% of them are for Trump instead of Harris, or whatever we decide, and then it just goes away and you never find it again, and then you're stuck. And the only way around this is to hand count. Except that it isn't. You can just run it through the tabulator again the next day and the next week, which they're doing over and over again all the time with all of these ballots. They're counting and recounting like constantly over the next couple days. Like they're doing that. So if it went away after it's timed for the election day, it would still have to be there for all the recounts. And like, how do you know how long the recounts are going for? So it's got to stay there for longer.
Yeah.
And if you counted them now with the same ballot machine, you'd need them to be there or whatever, right? Like you'd need them. This vote tabulation thing is not feasible. It's not practical. It's timed window for it to just go away. That's the reason why you wouldn't find it. I mean, they're doing audits also on the ballot machines, like software audits and everything else. And they're not like a computer. It's not like a laptop that runs a single program to tabulate votes that also has all of the ports and vulnerabilities as like a Windows laptop would have. It's a machine designed specifically for this. It only does this. It's much more, like I said, it's much more like a Xerox copy machine than it is like a laptop computer. So, even knowing what language to write malware in would be a problem. And it's probably not software that's held in like RAM on a hard drive. It's very likely firmware that's flashed onto a hard thing, which would stay. It's not timed. It's not going away. Otherwise, the firmware is going away, right? You look tired, man.
I am a little tired.
Yeah, a little tired. Well, we're wrapping up here. I promise we're wrapping up. So, yeah, this is his claim, is that this could happen the same way that Volkswagen did the Dieselgate thing. Quite a few major differences there in the access that Volkswagen had to their own cars that they're making. Then what, what are we thinking here? Like a Republican hacker would have to these voting tabulation machines.
Right.
And how,
because there's so many different hoops to jump through when you're designing voter tabulation machines to underpin the legitimacy of a democracy than there is for Volkswagen to just be like, oh, okay, well, if this testing feedback comes from connecting the whatever machine that tests the emissions now tricks the car into running slightly differently, like that seems a lot more feasible. Who's even looking for that, right?
Also, each voting tabulation machine is not counting all the votes across the state. There's thousands of tabulation machines, like I think some precincts might have more than one, and some precincts might not even have one, depending on, rural areas might have none, kind of thing, or whatever, because there's only a few hundred votes coming in or something. So how do the individual tabulation machines know what percent to bump the votes by to have it still be close enough to seem realistic in a swing state? Because you don't know how many votes are going to be for Kamala Harris, and you don't know how many are going to be for Donald Trump, like actual real people voting for them. And if you're going to fix the election in this way, you're going to say, okay, well, we need it to be like convincing, but not so convincing as to be a landslide in this, swing state. I think and
you don't want every precinct beating the other candidate by the same percentage.
Not every precinct shows Trump as the winner. Some still have to lose. So how do you coordinate that effort? I mean, that is, these have to be talking to each other. Like what is the full look at this? This doesn't make any sense. I think the margin in Pennsylvania was 120,000 votes. I think he says that in the podcast or in the YouTube video. So how do you get that close? There's something like 8 million votes in total or something in Pennsylvania, and you're only going to have your guy win by 120,000 votes. Like that's still a pretty, slim margin. How do you coordinate that? How do you get your flash firmware tabulating devices to coordinate this effort to have it only be ahead by, less than 1% of the total number of votes? Like that's,
not to mention, not every precinct is using the same machine, right? Like there are some hand counting, right? So how does it have any idea what's going on in the hand counted precincts?
Yeah,
To
and
be able to,
if it's not going to do every tabulation machine, if it's only going to do some, then it has to boost those ones by much more, right? Which is where you would get the tail that Sergei Shpilkin talks about. This is where you get this. You'd get a smaller number of points that are doing something weird. But that's not what we're seeing in Pennsylvania. We're seeing the larger number of points, and there's a range of the same voter turnout. Right. So there is a real problem with the elections in the United States that favors Republicans. And the data that he shows, specifically this heat map that's on the screen right now for people watching on YouTube, which is the data from all of Pennsylvania that shows his two blobs, one with more prominence than the other. This graph shows that problem, is an indication of that problem. Do you know what that problem is? You're tired. It's okay. I'll just answer it. It's this. It's the same graph, but instead of calling the blob upward and to the right the suspect data and the blob at the bottom natural data, you just switch them. Because this data with the higher voter turnout and more voters coming in here is where most of your data is. This one that's the blob down here, downward and to the left, this is the outlier data. This is the skew. This is the tail. So this is the real data up here where we're looking at Donald Trump getting votes anywhere from like 45 to like 75. And then we have this other skew down here where he was getting very small number of the votes and there was lower voter turnout. This is an indication of vote suppression. So targeted vote suppression is a strategy where you have precincts that you know will turn out strongly for your opponent, and you work to suppress the vote in those precincts. And you micro-target just those precincts. There's, I don't know exactly how many there would be in this data bundle, probably only a few hundred. But if it changes the entire vote by 1%, that's definitely enough to change Pennsylvania. It's not illegal, but it is a problem because there's people who should be voting who aren't. And that's what this represents. This is a voter turnout problem that switched Pennsylvania from being a blue state into a red state. And I'm sure.
And so that's the real issue, not
this is the real issue. And his data shows it. It shows what it looks like. It shows lower voter turnout in precincts that were going to be very much not voting for Trump. I mean, that the center of that blob is less than 10% for Trump. That's a crazy strong turnout for Kamala. If they had more votes there, they might have been able to change the outcome of the election. And this is a problem that's been talked about my entire life in the United States. As long as I can remember, voting in the United States has been talked about voter suppression. This is where we get back to voter ID laws, which more greatly suppress the votes of minorities who tend to vote for Democrats. And this is what this shows. This is a part of these strategies working. I mean, voter ID laws aren't the only part of those strategies. They have all kinds of ways to micro-target people on Facebook and where they live in the neighborhoods, all kinds of things like that. I mean, there's all kinds of ways.
But that's not the problem he wants to confront.
No,
he wants to confront a different problem. So he's
wants
using
to confront
to paint a different picture.
A fictional problem instead of the real problem.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with what he's doing. It's not that his effort is is not needed. It's that it's misplaced. It's misdirected. And I even would say that he knows that that's a problem and is doing what he's doing anyway, which is wild to me. But chasing fictional narratives will divert you from the real problem you need to focus on fixing. And this is the reason why we cannot have people focused on the wrong thing when they could be focused on the right thing. It exhausts them. These unreal conspiracy narratives exhaust all the people who would be interested in putting in an effort to improve the situation to get a better outcome, a not Trump outcome. All the people who believe this guy are not going to look into voter suppression at all. Even though it's right in front of them, his data shows the problem, and they're not going to look at it. Now, that's Nathan Taylor and the Election Truth Alliance. I love that they have truth in their name. It's just such a dead giveaway that they're not even really doing that. It just, yeah, whatever. So I wanted to talk a little bit about David Pakman. Now, I mentioned I've seen some of his videos. I think generally he's pretty good, not as sensational as some others. But the video that this was titled, let me pull it up here. It was titled Bombshell Claim, Trump Did Not Win 2024, Election Manipulated. Now he's saying that that's what the claim is, but it also kind of sounds, if you read it the right way, that he's saying that Trump did not win and the election was manipulated. Now, David Pakman has something like, I don't know, over 2.5 million followers on YouTube. So he's in the category of kind of a major YouTuber. He probably isn't the guy that's choosing what to name the video. Not at that level. Probably not. I don't really know, but he probably has a producer that helps him with this, that helps him name the videos and everything else. And they're picking a name that's sensationalistic to get views. Okay. So there was a subsequent video follow-up to this. A month after this one came out, there was a follow-up video. We're not covering it, but David Pakman goes through and he talks to Nathan Taylor about all of his claims. And he starts with, we looked into it and we think there is no evidence of election rigging. Like point blank. And then it's a Gish Gallop pivot into new data, and in some cases not even new data, like the same data with new graphical representations that shows supposedly the same claims. They're more ridiculous. If I wanted to make this just a podcast where I complain about all the things about Election Truth Alliance, I would put another hour into that, because I just hate when people do statistics poorly and expect people to buy it. But all of his graphs and his trend lines they make me sad. They make me really sad that anyone put a trend line in a big blob of data like that and pretend that there's a line that's supposed to be there somewhere. After all of that, David Pakman is still like, yes, I think you should look into this. I think people should look into this, and people should, it's almost like he's saying, do your own research. This is a very bad idea. There's a reason why people who have knowledge of statistics should do statistics, and people who don't have knowledge of statistics should not do statistics. Because you get things like this, where you get some data that's meant to look suspicious, but doesn't even really resemble the original problem data that is supposed to be the problem. And then also you get a switch to another data set that is supposed to be maybe part of the problem, but it's a completely different data set. This is all incoherent. Nathan Taylor filed a lawsuit to try to force the courts to allow for a hand recount of all the ballots in Pennsylvania. He lost that. That got dismissed before it ever went to any kind of a trial. It got dismissed just a few weeks ago. So, and I didn't read the entire thing, but I read the Cliff's notes of what the judge decided when he was dismissing each of the claims. It was mostly that they were not prepared, that they claimed that they were going to have a bunch of data and that data was not provided, and the judge is just tired of waiting, so he's dismissing it. Which that you know, in the second of these two videos, which was in October 2025, he claims he's filing the lawsuit. He filed it in November of that year, and then as of June, he doesn't have any of the data. I think it's much like this, where he's cobbling together different sets of things to kind of make it look like something is happening that isn't. It's not really the case. And he has shown a problem that he's not even talking about. So I'm comfortable calling this, I mean, he's also accepting donations on his website. So I'm comfortable calling this a grift. He's claiming he's going to do a lawsuit. He doesn't put any effort into the lawsuit. He collects money to fight the lawsuit and then doesn't put much effort into doing it. That sounds very grifty to me. And I think that David Pakman should think about these things more when he allows people like this onto his very large platform. The follow-up of this, the YouTube video, the first one that you watched had 3.5 million views. The follow-up had less than 1 million. So 3.5 million people saw David Pakman listen to everything this guy had to say with very little pushback. And then fewer than 1 million of them saw him say, I looked into it and I saw no sign of rigging, which isn't great. Like, it's like running a false story on page 1 and the next day running a retraction on page 6.
Yeah.
It just,
you should go to the same lengths to correct yourself that you went to promote yourself.
He did this YouTube video on the same channel, but fewer people watched it all the same. So he doesn't have a lot of control over that, but something he should consider if he's going to ever let more people like this onto his platform, because he has a major platform. He should deal with it responsibly.
I've never heard of him before.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep track of a lot of these US influencers. They're a whole class of people now. But anyway, that's about it. Sorry that you were so tired, Patrick.
Sorry, like I said, my battery low. Long, hot day.
It's okay. Anyway, with that, do you have anything that you want to, any special message for people that you want to say? Good tidings, good thoughts? What?
I don't know. I just think it's important that people put in the time to fully study the things that they want to talk about with authority, right? Like if you want to talk like a doctor, be a doctor. Go to medical school.
Before I try to carve into a person and all of their skin blemishes, I should have gone to medical school to
something like that. But I see a lot of it. I see a lot of it in a lot of different areas where people just, recently in local forum news, someone was talking about, the sky is clear, but you wait till FIFA's over and then all the chemtrails will be back. I'd be like, well, you're calling them chemtrails. They're contrails, right? Unless you know that there's cloud seeding going on, then at least understand that contrails can last for over a day. They are going to accumulate.
The same way that clouds sometimes last that long.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's almost like the clouds are also condensation that occurs in the sky above us. It's crazy to think that there might be moisture in that air anywhere.
But then people think only chemtrails would last that long. It's like, so you're telling me that they want to disperse chemicals, and the dispersion is just going to leave them stuck lingering as some eyesore in the sky? I just, what's with people? Anyway.
Well, technically they are chemicals, right? It's H2O.
Sure.
Perfectly good chemical.
Yeah, right.
Okay. With that, we're gonna sign off. Yeah. So till next time, Patrick.
Sayonara.
True. Please remember to rate this podcast as often as possible to increase its reach. Due to the fact that rating algorithms are so incredibly rigged, only 5-star ratings are worth anything. All other numbers might as well be 0 stars. If it's not a 5-star rating, I would prefer none at all. Sorry, I didn't build the system. Please subscribe to this podcast to get the latest episodes brought straight to you and recommend it to whomever you think would enjoy it. And special thanks to Jeff Powell for the theme music. I paid for it by listening to him play his old acoustic guitar until the strings broke back in high school. It was worth it.